This is the story of Bhaskar Kumar, a bank employee earning just $69 a month. Despite his hard work, he faced constant humiliation and struggles due to financial difficulties. But one day, he discovered a unique banking system that changed his life forever. Within just 2 years, he became a billionaire. Curious about what this magic lamp was? Enter the world of Lucky Bhaskar, a movie that's bound to blow your mind. It's not just a film. It's a masterclass on using your wit and creativity to turn your life around. Don't miss this year's most inspiring and thrilling story. So, without wasting any more time, let's dive into today's movie explanation. The year is 1992, and the place is Bombay, the capital of India at the time. Here we are introduced to a genius mastermind named Bhaskar Kumar. From the start, it's clear that he's far ahead of the average middle-class individual. The year 1991 to 92 was a significant period in India's history, especially in the world of finance. During this time, the stock exchange witnessed the rise of Harshad Mehta, a dark magician of the market. Whenever Harshad Mehta entered the market, share prices would skyrocket in no time. Whenever Harshad Mehta sold a share, its price would crumble like a house of cards. However, today's story isn't about Harshad Mehta. Instead, it's about Bhaskar Kumar, a man who gave tough competition to Harshad Mehta himself. As the story unfolds, we see a team of CBI officers arriving to interrogate Bhaskar Kumar. It's clear that Bhaskar's reality is catching up with him. The lead officer, Lakshman, takes him straight to a branch of Magadh Bank. Bhaskar, by the way, is the assistant general manager of this bank. The CBI has information that Bhaskar has been involved in a massive bank scam, embezzling a huge amount of money. The officers begin by searching the bank and printing Bhaskar's personal bank statements. The moment they get hold of his records, the entire room is left in shock. Everyone's eyes widen in disbelief. An ordinary banker's account shows a balance of $1 billion. Even Lakshman is stunned. After all, Bhaskar's monthly salary is just $418. How could this be possible? How did Bhaskar Kumar manage to build such an empire in just 2 years? This is where the search for answers begins. Bhaskar starts explaining how he legally became the owner of so much money. To understand his journey, we need to go back 3 years, to 1989. At that time, Bhaskar Kumar was just a dedicated bank employee working as a cashier at Magadh Bank. His monthly salary was only $69, and he had already taken a $300 loan from the bank to somehow make ends meet. Despite his struggles, Bhaskar was a hard-working and exceptional employee. He was so good at his job that every year he would win the Employee of the Year award. Bhaskar Kumar's life was a mix of simplicity and greatness. He lived like an ordinary man but carried an extraordinary personality. At home, his younger brother was working tirelessly to pass his engineering exams, while his younger sister was fighting for a brighter future. His father, Prabhat Kumar, was once a renowned chartered accountant in India. However, after being betrayed in business by a close friend, he was left paralyzed and now leads a retired life. Even in such tough times, his wife, Sumati, stood by him with unwavering support. Bhaskar's family included his 6-year-old son, Kartik, and despite their struggles, they tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. But their biggest challenge was money. Bhaskar was so indebted that it was hard to find anyone in the neighborhood who didn't have money owed by him. From small loans of $6 to $116, even the loan shark Patel constantly threatened him to repay. Bhaskar somehow managed to dodge him by promising to pay next month every time. However, things kept getting worse. His debts grew so large that people around him began to insult him openly. The humiliation didn't stop there. He couldn't even afford to buy a gift for his son's friend's birthday. In desperation, he ended up giving away his son's toy as a gift. Life was becoming unbearable for Bhaskar. Whenever Bhaskar visited his in-laws, they wouldn't even look him in the eye while talking to him. Over time, Bhaskar realized one harsh truth. In this world, there is no substitute for money. Sumati's mother would constantly encourage her to leave Bhaskar and start a new life. But Sumati truly loved him and refused to give up on their marriage. One day, at her brother's son's birthday party, they faced a painful humiliation. When Bhaskar's son Kartik asked for an extra piece of cake, his aunt refused to give it to him. Watching this, Sumati couldn't hold back her frustration anymore. She left the house without eating anything. On their way home, Bhaskar, feeling hungry, stopped at a local street food stall to buy 3 vada pavs. But when he checked his pocket, he realized he only had enough money for 2. Seeing his situation, the kind-hearted vendor gave him the extra vada pav for free. This moment made Bhaskar realize 2 things. There are still good people in this world, but to live with dignity, he had to achieve one thing: Money. Bhaskar still had hope for a better future, as his promotion was just around the corner. The assistant manager at his bank was about to retire, and his boss, Himanshu, had promised Bhaskar that he would be promoted to that position. If that happened, his salary would increase to $186, which meant all his financial troubles might finally come to an end. In the meantime, Bhaskar had found a small side income. He would help people who couldn't fill out bank forms for a small fee. His childhood friend Samba always assisted him in this. Although Bhaskar became a manager after topping in college, and Samba worked as a peon in the same bank, their friendship and mutual respect remained as strong as ever. One day, while working on his side hustle, a man named Anthony came to the bank to apply for a loan. However, Anthony didn't have any collateral or valuable assets required for the loan. Bhaskar flatly refused and told him the bank couldn't lend him even a single rupee. Despite Anthony's repeated requests and pleas, Bhaskar firmly explained that he couldn't help him. The next day, Anthony returned to Bhaskar and pleaded again for help. This time, Samba revealed Anthony's true story. Anthony was an importer who brought electronics from foreign countries at low prices to sell in India. However, this time, a customs officer at the port was demanding $2,400 to release some TVs. Anthony explained that if he could get a loan of $2,400, he could clear the goods and sell them the very next day for 4 times the amount. He promised to repay the loan immediately with interest. Hearing this, Bhaskar couldn't help but feel suspicious. Something about Anthony's story didn't sit right with him. But Samba seemed confident and said, "Come on, man, why don't you ask your brother-in-law if he can lend you the money for just 2 days?" Bhaskar dismissed the idea, saying, "That guy doesn't even treat me like a human being, so there's no way he'd give me the money." Still, Anthony's persistence made it clear that he wasn't going to give up easily. To get rid of him for the moment, Bhaskar told him he'd think about it. But shortly after, something terrible happened to Bhaskar. The loan shark Patel demanded $120 from Bhaskar on the spot. Bhaskar begged him not to humiliate him in front of so many people, but Patel ignored his pleas. He continued to insult Bhaskar publicly, shouting, "You will pay me my money right now." Things escalated when Patel noticed Bhaskar's scooter, his last remaining asset. Without hesitation, Patel forcibly took the scooter from him as payment. Witnessing a respectable man being humiliated like this in front of everyone broke Bhaskar's spirit. That day, Bhaskar didn't even have money to hire a vehicle to get to work. With a heavy heart, he ran all the way to the office. But his day only got worse. When he arrived, he learned that despite his years of exceptional performance and hard work, the assistant manager position he was hoping for had been given to someone else, an insider connected to the management. Bhaskar couldn't believe his eyes. He had worked tirelessly day and night hoping for this small promotion, which was crucial for him at this moment. Even his regional manager, Himanshu Chaudhary, had personally assured him the position would be his. This betrayal left Bhaskar completely shattered. Despite everything, Bhaskar couldn't hold back his anger and frustration. He marched straight to Himanshu's office to confront him. Bhaskar boldly said, "You're a liar. You gave me false hope, made me work tirelessly, and in the end handed the position to someone from your neighborhood." Hearing such harsh words from a junior, Himanshu lost his temper. Unable to tolerate Bhaskar's accusations, he snapped back, "Wait, I'll show you your place," and picked up the phone to call the company's managing director to lodge a complaint against Bhaskar. At that moment, Bhaskar realized he had made a terrible mistake. If he lost his job, things would get even worse for him and his family. Desperate and terrified, he dropped to his knees, begging for forgiveness. Just think, how helpless must a man feel to kneel and apologize for simply fighting for what he rightfully deserved? The entire office watched in silence as Bhaskar's humiliation unfolded. Eventually, Himanshu calmed down and decided to let the matter go. He assured Bhaskar that he wouldn't report the incident to the general manager. After such a humiliating incident, Bhaskar was left devastated but knew he had to gather his strength. He realized that if he didn't stay strong, there would be nothing left for him to hold on to. After returning to work, Bhaskar began behaving just as positively and cheerfully as before, surprising everyone around him. That evening, after work, Bhaskar and Samba were sitting at a small eatery when Anthony showed up again. This time, even though Samba told him to leave, Bhaskar asked him to sit down. Bhaskar then asked, "If I give you $2,400 now, can you guarantee that you'll profit enough to pay it back?" Anthony's eyes lit up and he replied, "I guarantee 100% that by tomorrow I'll turn this $2,400 into $4,800. Hearing this, Bhaskar reached into his bag and handed Anthony $2,400 in cash. Samba couldn't believe his eyes and immediately questioned where Bhaskar got so much money. However, before explaining, Bhaskar told Anthony, "I'm investing this money in your business, so from the profit you'll give me and Samba 10% each. Deal?" Anthony quickly agreed to the deal, grabbed the money, and rushed off to the port to stop his goods from being auctioned. Once Anthony left, Samba demanded an explanation. Bhaskar revealed his secret. "This money is from the bank. I took it from today's cash deposits." Samba was shocked to hear this, realizing Bhaskar had taken a massive risk by borrowing from the bank's funds without authorization. Since it was a Friday, Bhaskar knew no one would check the accounts over the weekend. He planned to return the $2,400 quietly to the vault before Monday. Essentially, the bank's money would remain untouched except he would borrow it for 2 days. Hearing this plan, Samba was dumbfounded. "Are you out of your mind? Aren't you afraid of going to jail? If you get caught, you'll lose your job and everything else?" But Bhaskar resolute replied, "My life has reached a point where I have nothing left to lose. My brother's education, my father's medicine, my son's meals. I have to arrange all of it. I can't bear to watch my family suffer like this anymore. For their happiness, I'm willing to cross any boundary." As they were discussing this, Anthony returned with news that he had successfully stopped the auction. "Now I just need to pay the customs officer and I can release my goods," he said. Bhaskar placed his hand on Anthony's shoulder and said, "Brother, I'm putting my life in your hands. Please don't break my trust." Then Bhaskar asked Anthony to explain the details of his business to ensure everything was legitimate. Anthony began explaining how he planned to make a profit and pay back the loan. In the 1980s, televisions became quite popular in the subcontinent. However, in this country, a single television would cost around $462. Meanwhile, in the countries where these TVs were manufactured, they were sold for just $93 to $116. The significant price increase was due to heavy taxes imposed by the government. To evade these taxes, importers devised a clever method. They disguised televisions as spare parts. Since spare parts were exempt from taxes, this allowed them to import TVs at a much lower cost. By greasing the palms of customs officers with some tea money, the goods could easily bypass restrictions. This system allowed anyone with some extra investment to make quick profits and even become wealthy overnight. Hearing all this, Bhaskar felt somewhat relieved. He sent Samba along with Anthony to oversee the process and returned home, waiting anxiously for good news. However, 2 hours passed and there was no sign of Samba or Anthony. Bhaskar's mind was flooded with fear and doubt. Did they get caught? Or worse, did Anthony run away with the money? What if both Samba and Anthony betrayed me and fled together? These thoughts gnawed at him, driving him to the brink of madness. If Bhaskar were to lose $24,000 today, you can imagine what would happen. His life would collapse entirely. Finally, when Samba arrived, Bhaskar noticed the dark expression on his face. His heart sank, convinced that his gamble had failed. But just as he was preparing for the worst, he spotted Anthony walking in. In an instant, Bhaskar realized he had been wrong. Anthony hadn't betrayed him. Not only did Anthony manage to retrieve his goods from customs, but he also earned a profit of $2,400, out of which both Samba and Bhaskar received $232 each. Bhaskar hugged Anthony, not just for the money, but out of sheer joy that Anthony had kept his promise. Anthony's honesty created a turning point in Bhaskar's life, one that would slowly begin to turn his struggling existence around. With this newfound money, Bhaskar paid off Patel and got his beloved scooter back, much to the amazement of his wife, Sumati, who could hardly believe her eyes. The next day, Bhaskar returned to the bank before anyone else arrived. His mission was to discreetly return the $2,400 to the vault. He executed this with such precision that even an ant wouldn't notice. What does this mean? It means Bhaskar had discovered a flawless system, one that no one could detect. From then on, Anthony began regularly importing goods from the port, while Bhaskar quietly borrowed money from the bank for 2 days at a time to finance the business. This became their secret formula for success. Bhaskar's life began to progress at rocket speed. No longer did he have to face humiliation for money. His siblings' education, the bank loans, and even new furniture for the house. All of it was becoming a reality. Watching this transformation, Sumati felt like she was living in a dream. She couldn't quite comprehend how Bhaskar had managed to turn his life around so quickly. The truth is, when someone who has lived in poverty finally conquers it, their behavior naturally changes. Sumati started noticing these changes and one day asked Bhaskar to tell her the truth about where all the money was coming from. Bhaskar lied, saying he had started an export-import business and taken a loan from the bank to fund it. He assured her that the business was flourishing, which explained the newfound wealth. Being a simple and trusting person, Sumati believed him and felt at ease, happily enjoying their new life. One day, Bhaskar threw a grand birthday party for his son. The lavish celebration left everyone in the neighborhood amazed. They couldn't believe how much Bhaskar's life had changed. During the party, Anthony shared some news. His son had asked him to move to America permanently, and he was seriously considering it. However, before leaving, Anthony wanted to do one last big job with Bhaskar. Anthony proposed a new venture to Bhaskar, one that involved importing luxury foreign cars. The potential profit was enormous, 6 times the investment. However, the required amount for this deal was $11,550. Hearing this, Bhaskar's face tensed with worry. Until now, they had only managed to discreetly use $2,400 from the bank, which was already risky enough. Taking $11,550 was an entirely different challenge, and Bhaskar immediately decided that this was something he couldn't do. Returning home, Sumati praised the success of the birthday party, calling it one of the best ever. However, Bhaskar noticed something was off. His son Kartik was crying. Concerned, he asked Kartik what had happened. Kartik replied, "Dad, you know my friends used to mock me, saying I only came to their parties for free cake or calling me a beggar for wearing the same shirt repeatedly. But today, after seeing this big party, they treated me with so much respect and kindness. It's all because of you, Dad. You've shut them all up." Hearing these words, Bhaskar's heart filled with mixed emotions. He realized how much money could change perceptions. People who once dismissed him now treated him with respect, and his son's happiness and pride stemmed entirely from this newfound status. At that moment, Bhaskar understood that to maintain this respect and dignity, money was absolutely indispensable. Bhaskar finally calls Anthony and says, "Sir, I agree to your deal." And so begins Bhaskar's big mission to pocket about $12,000. Bhaskar's bank manager Narayan Sir is known for coming late to work and leaving early, which Bhaskar has often taken advantage of. But today is different. Narayan Sir doesn't leave even after the bank closes. Bhaskar had taken a large sum from the vault and was planning to sneak it out, but with Narayan Sir sticking around, things weren't looking good. Thinking fast, Bhaskar asks Samba to make a call and keep Narayan Sir busy for 10 minutes. Seizing the opportunity, Bhaskar quickly stuffs the cash into his briefcase and walks out, successfully hiding $12,000. The money is used to release a few cars they had at the port, intending to sell them to a dealer. But things take a turn for the worse. The dealer gets arrested by the police for smuggling. Now, with the cars in hand but no one to sell them to, Bhaskar has no way to return the stolen money to the bank. Samba, furious, almost attacks Anthony, but Bhaskar calms him down, saying, "We've shared profits together, so we'll face this loss together." Anthony mentions another dealer in Goa who might buy the cars. The problem? Getting the cars to Goa without raising suspicion. Bhaskar, ever the schemer, comes up with a clever plan. He puts government flags on the cars and starts the journey. Things almost fall apart when the police stop them for documents. While Bhaskar and Anthony manage to slip past, Samba gets caught. Just then, Bhaskar pulls off his ultimate trick. A man posing as a minister steps out of one of the cars. Seeing the minister, the police are too scared to question further and let them pass. In reality, the minister was a poor man Bhaskar had dressed up for this purpose. Eventually, they sell the cars in Goa and escape the crisis. Bhaskar bids an emotional farewell to Anthony at the airport, as Anthony heads to America to start a hotel. However, when he arrives, he's shocked to find the police surrounding the bank. His heart sinks, thinking he's been caught. But inside he discovers the police are there to arrest Himanshu, a corrupt officer who had been taking bribes and unfairly giving promotions. Relieved but still cautious, Bhaskar heads to the vault with Narayan Sir. He adjusts the accounts cleverly by adding $60,000 to the register while keeping $12,000 for himself. Just as he thinks he's safe, the bank's GM, Vinod Bose, appears and asks him to open his suitcase. Bhaskar freezes, thinking it's all over. When he finally opens the suitcase, it's empty, only clothes inside. Unbeknownst to everyone, Bhaskar had removed the cash just 5 minutes earlier. He manages to escape suspicion and leaves the bank unscathed. Later, reflecting on everything, Bhaskar makes a vow. Greed can only lead to destruction. I'll never do this again. However, Samba no longer wanted to continue with his peon job, so he quit and focused on other pursuits. Meanwhile, Bhaskar had managed to save $7,200 over time, which he had planned to use for various purposes. Unfortunately, his younger brother got admitted to a prestigious university abroad, where the cost of studying was exactly $7,200. With no other option, Bhaskar had to spend all the money he had saved for the family solely on his brother's education. They say when fortune smiles upon you, it may take its time, but brings great rewards. That's exactly what happened to Bhaskar. The very next day, when he went to the office, he received news that turned his entire world upside down. The chairman himself called him into a meeting and announced, "From today, you are the AGM of Magadha Bank. I've received excellent reports about you, and you are the perfect candidate for this position." In just one day, Bhaskar's salary skyrocketed from $72 to $228. As a bonus, he was also given a Maruti 800 car. Thrilled, he drove the red car home and shared the news with Sumati, who was overjoyed. But this is just the beginning of the story. So far, we've seen the early lessons of Bhaskar's life. Now begins the chapter where we learn how Bhaskar built $12 million fortune in just 2 years. Anyway, Bhaskar was transferred to the Bombay main branch. On his first day there, the bank chairman gave him a major responsibility. This responsibility was related to Harshad Mehta. In fact, Harshad Mehta's company, Grow More, and his personal account were both with this bank. The chairman told Bhaskar that Harshad was their most VIP client, and that Bhaskar should fulfill whatever Harshad needed. Bhaskar assured the chairman that he would follow this instruction to the letter. The next day, Harshad Mehta's close associate Suraj arrived in front of Bhaskar with 2 bank receipts, BR, from a bank called Qatari Bank. Now, let's take a quick finance lesson and understand what a BR is. Just as a bank can lend money to an individual or a company, it can also lend money to another bank. However, direct bank-to-bank money transfers are not possible for these transactions. Instead, these transfers are handled by a third party, usually through a company like Magadha Bank. Essentially, a BR is the document through which a bank finalizes these deals. Suraj came with 2 such BRs and had Bhaskar sign them. However, Bhaskar told Suraj that he only had 2 weeks to complete the task. Bhaskar calmly told Suraj that he would not tolerate any delays in returning the money. Essentially, Bhaskar was urging him to proceed legally. However, 4 weeks later, instead of 2, Harshad Mehta returned the money. Bhaskar, still composed, warned him that next time he would not tolerate such behavior. After hearing this, Suraj realized that Bhaskar was going to become a significant obstacle for them. Regardless, Suraj now requested Bhaskar to print a copy of Harshad Mehta and his company, Grow More's, bank statements. However, by mistake, a double print of the statement occurred. Bhaskar left 1 copy with him and bid him goodbye. At that moment, Bhaskar's curiosity grew, and he thought to himself, "Let me see how much money India's richest person has in his bank account." When he saw the figures in Harshad Mehta's account, his eyes widened in astonishment. By that time, Harshad's wealth had grown to unimaginable proportions. However, Bhaskar's attention was drawn to one particular detail in the statement. According to the procedure, the money that was supposed to be transferred from his bank to Qatari Bank via BR was, in fact, going to Harshad's company, Grow More. This meant that the so-called bank-to-bank loan was actually a scam. Harshad was taking money from Bhaskar's bank and using it for his own purposes. Once his work was complete, he would return the money. This entire scheme made sense to Bhaskar, as he had done something similar in the past to make money. Still wanting to confirm, Bhaskar decided to visit Qatari Bank. Once there, he asked to see their statement for receiving the money. However, based on the manager's demeanor and his expensive watch, it was clear to Bhaskar that the entire bank had already been bought by Harshad Mehta. But the real question was, what kind of business was Harshad Mehta actually running with this money? To uncover the mystery, Bhaskar went straight to the BSE Bombay Stock Exchange. There he learned something that he found out that Harshad Mehta was manipulating the stock market. Let me explain it clearly. Harshad Mehta began by buying shares of some unknown companies at very low prices. Then, his entire team started buying those same shares. Seeing this, the general public got interested and started buying the shares as well, driving the price up. Within weeks, a share that was worth 24 cents shot up to $6. At that point, Harshad Mehta and his team, who had bought the shares at 24 cents, sold them off at $6, profiting massively. This is how he became the big bull of the stock exchange. I hope you can now understand that Harshad Mehta was playing a very clever game. But to carry out this stock manipulation, he needed a lot of money, which he managed to gather by colluding with various banks. After hearing all this, Bhaskar finally understood the full extent of Harshad Mehta's scam and how he was fooling the entire country. Now Bhaskar had 2 options. Either he could become a pawn in Harshad Mehta's game, or he could expose everything to the bank chairman. Bhaskar chose the second option and decided to call the chairman. However, just then a twist of fate occurred. Kartik was returning home from school and his mother was scolding him. When Bhaskar asked about it, Kartik explained that one of the boys in his school had stolen chocolates from a girl. When Kartik found out about the incident, the boy offered him half of the stolen chocolates if he kept quiet. As a result, Kartik kept the secret and became an accomplice in the theft. This small incident sparked something in Bhaskar's mind, and he realized the parallels between the situation Kartik faced and the larger deception Harshad Mehta was pulling off. After hearing this, Bhaskar said, "Dad, this isn't right." However, Kartik replied, "If I had been a good person and told the truth, I wouldn't have gotten anything." Hearing this, Bhaskar was taken aback. He realized that if he exposed Harshad, he wouldn't gain anything from it. But if he stayed on Harshad's side, there was an endless amount of profit to be made. With that realization, Bhaskar made the decision to enter the game. He went directly to Suraj with his plan. First, Suraj offered him a large check for a substantial amount. Bhaskar decided to keep this matter under wraps, but then he tore the situation wide open and said, "If you want to buy me, I'll set my own price. I'll keep everything clear and transparent for you. In return, I want 1% commission for every BR you give me, and I need to be informed a day in advance about any stock rigging you plan to do." Suraj immediately agreed without hesitation, as such an offer from Harshad Mehta's side was nothing more than a child's play. The very next day, Bhaskar signed a BR for $300,000 and took $30,000 as his commission. Since this money was illegal or black money, it needed to be converted into legal or white money. To do this, Bhaskar went to a man named Anwar, who was an expert in money laundering. When Bhaskar asked Anwar how he could make the $30,000 white, Anwar explained, "You can win a lottery, and that can make the money legal. For this, you'll need to pay a 4% commission. If you agree, we can make you the winner of the next lottery, and you will become the legitimate owner of $20,400. Bhaskar realized the depth of the game, understanding that even lotteries were part of a much bigger, more complex scheme. Following the plan, Bhaskar was made the winner of the $30,000 lottery, and when this news appeared in the newspaper, everyone genuinely believed that Bhaskar had won the lottery through sheer luck. As a result, he no longer faced any barriers to spending this money. Now that the money was legal, the next step was to grow it in a legitimate way. To do so, he needed to invest in the stock market. According to the previous deal, Suraj called and told Bhaskar that he could buy as many shares as he wanted today. Bhaskar understood immediately that Harshad was going to manipulate this company's shares. So he went straight to a poor, struggling exchange broker and asked to buy shares worth $20,400. 3 weeks later, Suraj called again and told Bhaskar to sell all the shares before the market closed that day. Bhaskar rushed to the broker's house, knowing that these people were so deep into the game that they didn't even have money to fix their phone lines. Anyway, Bhaskar managed to sell the shares on time. By investing $30,000, Bhaskar became the owner of $84,000 in just 4 weeks. Upon hearing all this, the CBI officer Lakshan was completely stunned, wondering how Bhaskar's life seemed to be progressing at rocket speed. In the midst of all this, one day, Bhaskar's sister's wedding was fixed, and Bhaskar wanted to make sure the wedding was celebrated with grandiose. However, despite all the money, Bhaskar still carried the demeanor of a middle-class man. One day, when he went to a jewelry store to buy some jewelry, the salespeople looked at him in such a dismissive way, as if they thought he couldn't afford even a gram of gold. He even had to take the glass of water himself. But there, Bhaskar noticed a man who arrived in a fancy car, wearing a suit and boots, and he was being treated like royalty. This made Bhaskar realize that just having money in your pocket wasn't enough. Respect had to be carried in your charisma and demeanor. So Bhaskar left the jewelry shop and went straight to the bank, withdrawing $84,000. He then went to a fashion house. At first, everyone there thought little of him, but as soon as he opened his bag of money, they started addressing him as "Sir," with great respect. Bhaskar then told his sister and wife, "Buy whatever you want." Since Bhaskar no longer had any shortage of money, he and his family bought expensive clothes and went straight to buy a car. Bhaskar bought a Nissan car for $20,400, a vehicle that was only owned by the wealthy at that time. When he returned to the jewelry store with this impressive car, the salespeople were completely stunned and became like fools in front of him. Their behavior completely changed, and seeing this, Bhaskar remarked that along with money, the right kind of aura and charisma are necessary, or else people will never respect you. This way, he was able to give his sister's wedding a grand celebration. However, the black money Bhaskar received from Suraj could not be continuously laundered through lotteries, as that could raise suspicions with the CPM. So he had to come up with a bigger money laundering system. According to this system, Anwar informed him that there were many foreign companies where agents could send cash from here and get remittances sent back from those companies. However, to make this work, they would need to set up a limited company. As a result, Bhaskar decided to set up a pickle company in his wife's name and began using money laundering to funnel money. However, his wife was unaware of all these activities. She only knew that her pickles had become extremely popular in Dubai and Singapore, and that large orders were flooding in, which is why their business had grown so quickly. While Sumati couldn't figure out what was going on, her father, Bhaskar Kumar, could sense something wasn't right. After all, he was a seasoned chartered accountant, and fooling him wasn't going to be so easy. As the days went on and everything seemed to be running smoothly, Bhaskar's behavior began to change. He was no longer the simple, good-hearted man he once was. Now he spoke angrily to his own people and didn't care about anyone anymore. One day, when Patel accidentally bumped into his car, Bhaskar crushed his scooter in a fit of rage. Seeing all this, his wife told him, Pride in money has turned you into a bad person, hasn't it? In response, Bhaskar said, I'm not a bad guy. I'm just rich. And this is the attitude of rich people, brother. This line was the boldest in the entire movie. But as the saying goes, pride comes before a fall. This is where Bhaskar's downfall began. One day, the manager from Qatari Bank came to Bhaskar's office for a task, and during their meeting he said, there have been a lot of large BR amounts coming from your bank lately. Moreover, Harshad has been accumulating these payments, and it has now surpassed 100 crores. Hearing this, the manager's eyes widened, as he explained that he had never approved such large amounts of BR before. So he took the copies of the BRS from Bhaskar and reviewed them. When he saw them, it was as if the sky had fallen on him. Harshad Mehta had been falsifying and forging the BRs using the bank's letterhead, seal, and even the manager's signature to embezzle vast amounts of money. Upon hearing this, Bhaskar felt the ground slip away beneath him. The manager continued, think about it. Harshad has taken money from not just one bank, but countless banks. If this information leaks outside, it could completely collapse the country's economy. The entire stock market would crash like a house of cards, and if Harshad gets caught, they'll have no option but to go to jail. Now, in such a situation, what will Bhaskar do? He never imagined he would end up in this mess. The manager repeatedly begged Bhaskar not to approve any more BRs, emphasizing that the information must not leak. With those words, he left the office. But on his way out, the manager collapsed from a heart attack and died right there. Bhaskar was left stunned, realizing that he was nothing more than a pawn in the hands of these powerful players. His bank had already incurred a loss of $12 million due to the fraud, but he couldn't share this with anyone. He also couldn't bear the weight of it all. Seeing his son in such distress, Bhaskar's father called him over and said, I know you did all this for the family. There was a time when you needed this money, but now it has turned into your greed. Remember this, there's a rule in gambling. No matter how good a player you are, it doesn't matter. What matters is knowing when to stop. That's where your true destiny lies. Hearing these impactful words, Bhaskar realized that it was time for him to step back. He began to plan how to return to his previous humble life. To start this process, he began distributing everything he had earned. He bought a house for his brother in America, gifted a flat to his sister, and invested money in a business for his wife's brother. From that point on, Bhaskar no longer approved any BRs for Suraj. Despite constant requests from the management board, Bhaskar firmly refused, saying, Sir, I can no longer approve a single BR for the good of this company. There is still $12 million pending from Harshad. If he settles this, then maybe I can help. Otherwise, if you try to force me, here, take my resignation letter. I resign from today. With that, Bhaskar resigned from his job, leaving everyone at the office completely stunned. Now, in this situation, we come full circle to the beginning of the movie, where Bhaskar was being taken into custody by the CBI. Up until now, Bhaskar had been telling them the story of how he had legally acquired so much money. However, he only confessed to the legal route and his fortunes, omitting the darker side of his rise to wealth. The CBI officer, after listening to Bhaskar's story, replied, Your story is interesting, but we have no concrete proof to arrest you because on paper, everything you did was legal. However, we can't leave empty-handed either. The person who hired me is none other than Mr. Rajveer, the chairman of this bank. So you can understand that the entire game was known to the bank's people. Despite knowing all of this, they used you as a mere puppet. Bhaskar was unable to believe what he was hearing. The idea that the bank itself was involved in the corruption was beyond his imagination. The bank chairman then revealed his true face to Bhaskar. He said, I know you've made a lot of money in this scheme, but when you decided to turn against us, you went to the Reserve Bank and filed a complaint against us without informing anyone. Now the $12 million pending in this BR needs to be paid by us. Otherwise, the entire bank will collapse, and you'll end up in jail. The chairman gave Bhaskar two options. 1. Tell the department to freeze your account and face jail time, or 2. Clear the bank's pending $12 million by giving the money to Harshad, and in return, you'll lose your money but remain free to live your life independently. After hearing these words, Bhaskar realized that all the money he had painstakingly earned would have to go to them. But not doing it meant he had no other choice. Without thinking further, Bhaskar wrote a check for the entire bank amount to Harshad Mehta, and in the process freed himself from this sin forever. But the question remains, is this where the story ends? The story takes an unexpected turn when the check, intended to be deposited into the bank, is returned with the shocking revelation that Bhaskar's bank account has a zero balance. It turns out that 10 days earlier, Bhaskar had deactivated his account and withdrawn all the money. This move by Bhaskar completely blows everyone's mind. But that's not all. Bhaskar, with the money, contacts Anthony and through him invests in purchasing a hotel in America. To launder the money, he needed approvals from the NRB, National Reserve Bank, and RBI, Reserve Bank of India, which he secures through his father's lobbying. As an investor, Bhaskar sets up his life in America, far away from the troubles back home. Meanwhile, the entire bank management is arrested by the police for embezzlement. When the chairman learns of this, he simply says one thing: "Bhaskar, you played well. So what can we deduce?" Bhaskar had already suspected that the bank's chairman was involved in the scam and that they had used him as a scapegoat. Knowing this, Bhaskar had prepared himself in advance for the right moment. His father had always told him that in any game, knowing when to stop is crucial, and Bhaskar made the right call at the right time. This decision saved him from everything. Thus, this is how the best movie of the year ends, with Bhaskar emerging victorious through his clever moves and strategic thinking.